attend this live event. I'd like to welcome all our new attendees and welcome back our previous listeners as well. It's great to see you again. We've got about 650 people attending this event from all over the world, so that is just awesome. Time to grab your lunch, coffee, or popcorn, and we should be starting shortly.
How can large companies compete like startups? Across industries, companies are now finding themselves in the tech business. From banking to fintech, retail to e-commerce, and healthcare to health tech. BayOne helps companies with their transformation journey into tech companies. Whether moving forward to the future of work by providing qualified experts on demand, training their legacy workforce on future technologies, or automating their business processes, BayOne is a unique partner for our clients' success. We help client teams scale up quickly through our deep pools of talent. BayOne screens each candidate so you don't have to spend time interviewing the wrong people. Consultants stay longer because of our comprehensive Employee 360 program. And we are committed to improving our clients' diversity of talent. We are metrics-driven, so results are assured. BayOne, the future works here.
Welcome back. We are hosting a series of Future of Work events because the technology landscape is changing fairly quickly, and the job responsibilities in organizations are changing even faster. Today's event is the Future of Cybersecurity. I also wanted to give a big shout out to our valuable customers, employees, and consultants that are making a difference, and also a hello to all our future customers listening in. We've received a ton of feedback and questions on cybersecurity. Keeping that in mind, we wanted to invite an elite panel to talk about what cybersecurity is, why is it growing, and the evolution of cybersecurity, and how you can get involved with the same, and maybe answer some of your questions along the way. So first off, quick introductions. My name is Anuj Segal, and I'm the VP of Sales for Strategic Accounts at BayOne Solutions, one of the top staffing companies in North America. I've been at BayOne for about 9 years now, working with some of our key customers and helping them scale up their teams. I'm a top 40 under 40 leader, and I serve as an advisor for the Transformative Leadership Program at Cal State University. I enjoy playing sports, music festivals, and I'm a big foodie, exploring all kinds of cuisines that I can get my hands on. Let me also introduce you to my close friends and the panel for today. Najib Kilani, he's the CTO and Chief Software Dev Officer at OPSEC Security. He has 20 years of experience running global software engineering teams, working for e-commerce giants like eBay, Walmart, Macy's, and tech disruptors like Open Web Systems. Along with his strong professional experience, he has a solid business acumen, which has allowed him to start and run a few businesses successfully. His passion for technology has helped companies build many complex platforms to meet customer needs and to solve key customer problems. Najib started several innovation labs during his careers to incubate new ideas and build many proof of concepts to disrupt different markets. He has also served on the advisory board at Ithaca College in New York for their cybersecurity program. He is a part-time basketball coach and has coached a few local junior leagues in the San Francisco Bay Area as well. Second up is Janine Johnson. She's the VP Head of Product Security at Netgear. After launching an IoT security product with Fortune 500 partners as the CEO of Sun2Water Technologies, a company she co-founded, Janine Johnson recently joined Netgear as the VP of Head of Product Security to thwart growing cybersecurity challenges catalyzed by COVID-19. Janine has enjoyed solving complex problems in a variety of technology companies over the past 2 decades, including companies like Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft, as well as forging strategic directions for others via McKinsey & Company. She was shortlisted as Entrepreneur of the Year at Silicon Valley's Women in IT Awards last fall. She's earned an MBA from Cornell University and 2 engineering degrees from the University of Missouri. She enjoys biking, camping, climbing, and skiing, as well as volunteering with the Girl Scouts. Next up is Daniel Blander. He's the Director of Security at Thought Machine. He's the leading developer of revolutionary core banking software. Daniel leads Thought Machine's global information security program across corporate and product security. Daniel has spent over 30 years providing risk management, security, and business continuity leadership globally to companies in a wide range of industries. He was a 2008 nominee for Information Security Executive of the Year for the West by the ISE. Next up is Upendra Mardikar. He's the Chief Security Officer at Snap Finance and the author of the book, The Purple Book of Software Security. He's a prolific inventor and cybersecurity and digital identity business enabler executive with an art of possible mindset. He leads global teams to secure world-class organizations and has held executive and senior leadership positions at American Express, Visa, PayPal, and is credited with more than 95 patents. So he's a Swiss knife, to be honest. Upendra is the Chief Security Officer of Snap Finance, which is a leading omni-channel digital-first fintech and POS lender, where he leads cybersecurity while building new platforms to enable growth opportunities. This includes securing innovative multi-platforms, cloud platforms and products, AI, client-facing technology, and customer and developer experiences. He also holds an MBA from Santa Clara University here in California and Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science from Vienna IT in India. And finally, Neil Bridges is the Chief Information Security Officer at Query AI and a cybersecurity professional with over 20 years of experience in information technology and security. His 10 years serving in the United States Air Force culminated in being hand-selected to build and establish the USAF's first cyber function training unit, where he developed, specialized, and trained thousands of US cybercom students on the latest advanced offensive cyber techniques. He's built security teams at multiple Fortune 100 companies and consults with organizations regularly, applying his experience in diverse, large-scale enterprise environments. Over his career, Neil has exceeded in the strategical, operational, and tactical arenas of cybersecurity. So I hope you're all as excited as I am to get this going. Let me hand this off to Neil, and then let's get this discussion started.
Thank you so very much, Anuj, and thank you very much to the BayOne team for having me and this awesome set of panelists here. I do truly appreciate it. As Anuj mentioned, my name is Neil Bridges, CISO at Query.ai, as well as the host of the popular live stream Cyber and Security on YouTube. I'm super excited to be here today. I'm super excited to be around this panelist. I'm excited for the spirited conversation that we're going to have together about the future of cybersecurity. Without any further ado, actually, real quick, I want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. Really, it's mostly about questions. I was informed that typically the way that these streams run is, questions are saved for the last. I worked it out with the BayOne team. I want to encourage the audience that if you hear something that's exciting or you hear something that sparks your interest, to drop your question in chat. The BayOne team is in chat listening for your questions right now, and we'll be able to aggregate those questions over the course of the entire stream and be able to either answer them live on stream or be able to answer them towards the end when we get towards the end of it. And so the way that I typically run my streams is ask those questions. Like if you get a question, there is no wrong time to ask it. And the expert panel that we've got here will be more than happy to answer that question, especially if it's relevant to what we're talking about here. But with that being said, hopefully my panelists are ready. Hopefully the audience is ready, and we're going to get right into it. Give me a thumbs up from the panelists. Everybody ready to go? Yeah. Bring the hype. That's what I'm talking about. Woo! All right. Listen, for those who don't know me, I love to get really into it. I get really, really excited when I talk about this topic, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. And I want to get into the thick of it right off the bat and talk about this notion of lack of cybersecurity talent. And I use my air quotes on that one because we hear this one all the time in our industry. It's a polarizing conversation. Literally just this week, tons of LinkedIn activity and tons of LinkedIn conversation has been going on about this topic specifically. There are published statistics that talk about there being a global shortage of approximately 2 million cybersecurity jobs across the market. Now, there are counterpoints that have been made this past week from several CISOs, CSOs in our space that there is actually not a talent shortage whatsoever. In fact, some in our industry specifically cite that we have more than enough talent more than enough talent, but we are facing recruiting process failures by looking for unicorns. And so, Janine, I want to start with you right off the top, because you've spoken on this topic in past Thoughtline Thursday interviews. Let's start with you. What is your take on this talent shortage, and is there one or not?
Well, I'd have to take a look at some of the sources that you're mentioning, but I know a couple months ago, the International Information for Systems Security Certification Consortium published a report that showed 400,000 open cybersecurity jobs in the US alone, and that the need for cybersecurity professionals increased by 30% in 2021. And that was before the recent destabilization of Russia by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So I think that the need for cybersecurity professionals is only going up.
I don't think anybody disagrees with the need, but do you see that there is a shortage of people applying? Do you see that there is a shortage of people getting accepted into roles, or is it? Do you feel like the problem with the shortage of talent comes from organizations not understanding what it is that they need to look for in cyber talent?
That could be valid. I could give an example of cybersecurity insurance. There's not a great way to calculate risk in this climate. And so I think for companies that are looking to hire actuaries in this space, it would be really challenging to find the right skill set to even do the type of job that they need. So I think that there are certain cases in which the jobs that are needed aren't well quantified in order to pair them with available talent.
That's a fantastic point, and I do think that you bring up a good point when you talk about the cyber insurance space and the inability to quantify risk. I think that's a very valid point. Najib, when you think about cybersecurity talent and the shortage, do you think that shortage of cybersecurity talent is more risky now than it has been any time in the past?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. And first of all, very excited to be on this panel. Super interesting topic. In fact, one of the dearest right now to me. I think the shortage is, let me start with a little bit of background. So with the explosion of the internet and everything just sort of growing without anyone thinking about cybersecurity to begin with, it became an afterthought. A lot of people didn't really think about it. And then it caught up to us when we came into this social world where everything is exposed, everything that we have, like our information and the systems getting exposed, and then you hear about some systems getting hacked and things like that. So all of that started to create this, this need for having this separate, function that basically focuses on that. So the need for the resources and, the cybersecurity roles had existed even previously, but it was an afterthought, and people would come in and do some kind of just a reactive measure on that. I think that the shortage is not there. The talent exists. It's just the definition of how these roles are defined, in different companies. Like, so for example, different threats, some are consumer centric, some are corporate, centric. And then there's a need for companies getting trained on this as well. So this shortage is probably, more coming from, how the understanding of the role, for different companies and even the candidates for that matter.
I'm glad you brought up the role conversation, and we've got a little bit of topics later on when we talk about some roles that I really want to pick your brain on, because you've got some good thoughts on this. So we'll get to the role piece here in a little bit. Daniel, you came from an interesting background. You came from an architecture background before you came into cybersecurity. Yep. Was your perception when you came into cybersecurity, was there a perception in your part that there was a shortage of talent or a shortage of jobs when you came in?
It was long enough ago that the word cyber which is one of my least favorite words, didn't exist. It was just security. And the whole concept of firewalls, or at least stateful inspection firewalls, was just emerging in the market. Yes, I'm dating myself horribly. It has evolved a long way since then. Back then, you didn't really have programs. There were a few that focused on security, but they were very rare. They were typically part of computer science programs. They didn't think about security. And then my alma mater started actually creating a program around managing security, which was great. And it was kind of a leader in that area. And now you see a lot of schools have emerged with these programs. So there is a pipeline available of new talent. The challenge, I think, is twofold. And I think you alluded to both sides of the equation. One, yes, there's an incredible demand. There's a draw for these resources. And in reality, if you look at what the industry needs to do security well, yes, there is a shortage. Can the companies fund it? Well, that's a business decision. You got to look at the costs and value and all that fun stuff. The other side of it, you really hit the nail on the head, which I see a lot and is something that in the hiring that I'm doing right now is one of the things I'm trying to beat out of the system. Are we just looking for unicorns? And I will tell you, unequivocally, at the job descriptions that I've seen, people are looking for unicorns. They will list specific languages people need to know. They'll list specific tool sets they need to know. And I will tell you, for the perspective of anybody, not just a white male, which granted I am, but if you're a female applying for these roles, it can be very distracting or discouraging. And bringing that back and saying, what's another way I can present that I need your intellect, I need your thinking, much more than I need a specific tiny little skill set. I want to know that you're comfortable communicating, that you can show empathy, that you can think in difficult problems. Yes, you might need a computer science background to understand those, but you've got to be able to have that critical thinking part of it. And coming from the background I did, I'm lucky because the program focused on that critical thinking and process stuff. I just happened to be handy with computers and evolved into it. But that critical thinking and being able to quickly frame the problems made the difference. And if we focus the job descriptions on that, what we're really looking for, then I think we'll find the right people. Now, will there still be a shortage? Probably. But let's start first with, let's put the right job descriptions and stop looking for these unicorns.
I think that's awesome, and you've done a really good job of kind of teeing this one up for me, right? As well as we move into this one. Upinder, I want to go with you with this next one to kind of piggyback on what Daniel was saying, right? Is, you know, as we talk about, you know, the shortage, as we talk about talent, as we talk about these different types of skill sets, all of you have been very, very experienced over the past in terms of hiring people and looking for talent and things like that. Upinder, when you're looking to hire talent for your team, similar to like what Daniel just described, what are some of the key skills that you're looking for in new members, whether they're technical or not?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. And I agree with Daniel and Janine and others, Najib's comment. So just before I get into what skills we are looking for, let me try to give a different perspective on what the talent gap is, right? So if you think about it, what is the talent and why their organizations feel that there is a gap is that there is certain requirement, certain need that organizations have that they want to fulfill. So obviously cyber, most of the organizations is not their bread and butter, right? I mean, they are not a vendor for most of the organizations. So they're not offering cyber as a product, if you will. So cyber is more like a defense strategy for them that, hey, I don't want to be in the news, and it's an existential threat to those organizations. But they want rapid time to market, stay competitive, potentially have a FMA in most of the organizations, yet not be in the news. So like Daniel was talking about, they're looking for unicorns that will come in, make sure that they are out of the news, out of trouble, and then do we have that particular talent? And the answer is yes, that particular talent gap is there. However, now let's flip it, right? So when you are talking about, the leaders like us, like Daniel and others, what are we looking for, right? I mean, we are not looking for, we should not be looking for a unicorn in this kind of situation. We want somebody who we can groom, right? So the person has to be extremely hungry. So one, he has to be, or she has to be extremely hungry to learn cyber. The second characteristic is the person should have humility, because if you don't have humility, you will not be able to learn. The third thing is teamwork, right? So that particular person has to be a team player, because, security is a team sport. I keep on saying that security is a team sport, and now, security is going to be a community sport, but it is a team sport. So that is number 3. And if you see, right, I mean, I have not even said the domain knowledge, and computer science, lack of the knowledge of that is just one dimension of cyber. There are multiple roles, right? I mean, there is a cyber law, cyber insurance, governance, and all those kinds of things. So those are 3 or 4 things that I look for when I'm hiring.
So I love that you keyed in on those 3 or 4 things, and I want to throw this out there I want everybody to have a chance to chime in on this as well. We can go around the horn with this. We can start with you, Janine, on this one. Can you give me the top 3 things that you look for when you're looking for hiring cyber talent?
Well, I think that the hungry to learn, cybersecurity, humility, and teamwork are a great starting point. It's hard to come
hard to
up
argue with that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. I think that there are a plethora of jobs within cybersecurity that may not require specific cyber skill sets. Analyzing and monitoring scan results and findings, tracking vulnerabilities through to resolution, reviewing existing and planned code for rollout. All these activities could be done by technical project managers and others who are interested in getting into more specific cybersecurity roles. So I think that there's a room for breadth. That said, I think that there's always a room for depth as well. Even with the most robust automation in place, there's always room for creative talent who can come in and identify and piece together some complex steps needed to breach even the most hardened and robust products.
Najib, it looked like you wanted to try to hop in there on
that. Yeah,
I
wanted to jump in, and I think that what Daniel, Upendra, and Janine have actually mentioned very key points. I think that first of all, job descriptions, very, very important pieces. And but I think when I'm looking for cybersecurity talent, I'm looking for engineers with out-of-the-box thinking, and then making sure that the data is protected at every level, or the applications that they're writing is protected. And I think it's just how you describe these roles to be. There's a lot of need for candidates to come out here and just work for top companies, which are obviously going after this. And as I mentioned at the beginning of my of the call, that this was an afterthought. We're all catching up to this, and there's an absolute need for the candidates to step in. So you have to be a good engineer. You have to understand how important it is to protect consumer data and your system data, which is basically the vulnerabilities that Janine talked about. And then the overall idea about knowing everything, to what Daniel mentioned, the unicorn, I don't think we'll be able to find that. So I think that stronger engineers who are actually have a good sense of data protection and security, and understand that these vulnerabilities and threat exist outside, is probably a good start for us to start to talk to the right candidates. That's all. Keeping it open.
No, I think that's awesome, and I've got to follow on to that, but it looks like we got our first question from the audience, and this is exactly why I wanted to do this, because I think this is valuable to get this like real-time feedback from the audience when we do this. I'll throw this one out there and see who wants to pick this one up. But it looks like we've got a question from Sean Henderson that says, for those of us interested in transitioning from other industries into cybersecurity, what sort of resources are out there to evaluate our existing skill sets and how we might best fit into the industry? Does anybody want to take that one?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janine.
Well, I was just going to, kind of throw out the idea of a good basic software engineering skill set. So for example, with my current company, I look for the basic software engineering skill set of a high level language like Java or C#, lower level language like Rust, C++, or C, and a scripting level language like Python, Lua, or JavaScript, in order for the engineer to be able to move across our stack easily. So I think building those basic software engineering skills is the first step.
Can I ask you a follow-on question to that one? I just asked you if I could ask you a question. Then I'm going to ask the question anyway. You can see the humor in that one. When you look at somebody who's trying to do that transition, they may lack, formal education. To your point about software engineering or something like that. They may lack the actual hands-on experience. How do you value some of these hands-on platforms where people can go and get hands-on experience, for low cost to entry, or even developing portfolios, especially in the software. I see Daniel's wanted to jump in on this one. You want me to switch over to you on this one, Daniel? Daniel wants to jump in on this one. Go for it.
So you've heard my background. I was trained as an architect. That's my undergraduate and graduate degree. So I was not trained in comp sci. I did learn Lisp. Yes, lots of insignificant silly parentheses. My coding skills are somewhat limited. Now I still tinker with it. And for those people getting into the industry, and you'll think, oh man, I got to learn C#, I got to learn Java. That's a lot of stuff and it's really intimidating. Start with some of the simpler stuff. Janine mentioned Python. Great starting point. It's a scripting language. Bash and C shell scripting, I can do with my eyes closed. I mean, I've done it just so long, but simple things like that. And I know it sounds like, oh, they're low level, but it's okay. You start getting the structure of how programmers think about things. Because one of the things I mentioned before was empathy for what the people you're trying to secure are doing. So if you're talking to a bunch of coders, having empathy of how they write programs, not knowing how to write Java or C++, because I don't know how to write them. Don't ask me, I'll ruin it. It's okay if you don't know it, but it's good if you understand the concepts to it. A lot of the learning platforms that are out there will teach you Python, will teach you Linux skills. Might even, there's still considerable use in learning Windows skills. You can tell there's a little bit of a dig there in Windows. But
it hurts you a little bit to say that one, I could tell.
Yeah. So there's still the value in going out and doing those things. Get those fundamentals so that you understand the concepts behind the computing. You need that. In fact, one CISO I worked with about 10 years ago, the two guys that were the senior leadership said to me, we've come to the realization that a good security person knows a little bit about every platform that he's managing. It's not knowing everything about it. It's knowing a little bit and being able to have that empathy, and then bringing along the critical thinking that they might bring from some other field that they've learned from. So build those basic skill sets and you'll find you'll start getting your foot in the door for security work, and you can build from there.
No, I think that's a fantastic point.
I have a different perspective.
Absolutely. Go for it, Abhendra. Yeah.
So, there are multiple dimensions to security, and I don't know the person who asked that question, which background that person is coming from, he or she. But, one of the dimensions of security is the policymakers, right? So there is cyber law and all that. You need not be a coder. You need not know Python. You did not know JavaScript. But in those kinds of things, you can come from law background, which has nothing to do with technology and can fan into cyber. Then there are enforcements in the policies like safety and security, so maybe in those kinds of things, obviously you will need a little bit of Python and all that. But then there is another dimension to it where an auditing function, right? I mean, a regulatory function where you are basically, just auditing and going through the checklist. So there are multiple dimensions to cyber. It's not just a technology problem. So, people, as they are transitioning from careers into cyber, they have to consider this holistic, take a holistic approach to cyber.
I think that's an awesome point, and that's actually a really good transition, Najib, to something that I did want to tee up for you specifically, right? And one of the things that I get asked personally on my stream, given my background and given some of the things that we see in the industry, is about the different types of jobs that exist inside of cybersecurity. I am bombarded constantly with people that only think that cybersecurity equals hacking. Right, they're obsessed with the way that we've villainized it, or movie, cinematography, created this fantasy world around hacking for cybersecurity, and thus all they ever think about in the cybersecurity space is pen testing jobs. And so, Najib, what I wanted to start with you on this one was, can you share your perspective on the different career paths, similar to what Abhendra was talking about, that exist inside of cybersecurity?
No, absolutely. I think Upendra, hit the nail on the head. I think it's very important to look at it from multi-dimension standpoint. Cybersecurity, was only linked to the technical expertise, which was a wrong way of taking a look at it. So there's all these different steps to it. the consumer aspect of it, where how you save you and protect your data. There's also this element of documentation and process building, that how do you protect information that's going from one department, functional department, to another, in terms of also doing data analytics. People do a lot of different data analysis and things like that. So there's, if you're good with data, if you're good with Excel, and you're actually there, trying to build up some kind of analytical view for your company, or for a team, that also requires the element of cybersecurity. So the roles that exist in cybersecurity can start from anywhere from training, which is basically some of the companies out there that provide security awareness trainings. You can be an instructor. You can actually just be someone who can be there training the teams to understand what are the different threats that exist out there. There's also elements of documentation and deck writing that also exist in cybersecurity. There's also, obviously engineering is always there. And then, these other aspects of legal that, Pindra just touched upon, which is a very important, area within cybersecurity, because, we have to make sure that the data is protected, or the PII is protected. So mostly these e-commerce platforms are actually getting into that as well. So there's a lot of different functions, starting from finance to legal to data analytics to product to, these are all these different spaces where, folks are looking for these specialized skills. And some of them can be easily learned, and some of them, can be banked on top of your existing talent that you have.
On that note, you talk about a lot of different skills, and one of the things that I think people have a misconception on when we talk about myth busting, what it is about cybersecurity, whether you're coming in as a newcomer fresh out of college, or whether you're, like the individual asked the question, is transitioning from another career field, is that there is one path into cybersecurity, or that there's one end into cybersecurity. Janine, I want to kind of start with you really, really quickly on this one. Do you buy into that notion that there's only one way to get into cybersecurity, or only one path?
I think I've worked with a number of different professionals who've come from a variety of fields. Some have come from as musicians into comp sci and then into cybersecurity. I've met people who were working more as electricians or repair people that have come in and turned out to be excellent pen testers. So there's been a variety of backgrounds. And I think most professionals in the industry are aware of the need to include some hands-on problem-solving type questions within the interview process, and make sure that people who are going through it are able to participate in the problem-solving experience.
I think that's awesome. And I want to bring that question back up from the BayOne team, because while we've got you here on screen, I do want you to address that one. Neha says, specifically for you, Janine, a question for you: how can more women get into cybersecurity? It seems a very intimidating field.
Well, I think that's probably true for engineering and as a whole. At least when I was going through school, there weren't a lot of women pursuing engineering, but it seems to have really flipped. There been a lot more women that I've been interviewing throughout the past few years, probably decade or so. So it seems like we've turned a corner, and that it's just a matter of time before the current people in school become professionals in their own right. But I think in terms of increasing the amount of women, often it's just seeing other women who are also on the team and feeling comfortable about joining, and that the group in the office and that culture are going to be sufficiently accommodating to women and inclusive.
No, good feedback right there.
Neil, can I jump in? Sorry.
Absolutely, have at it.
Be very passionate about
Absolutely,
it.
Go ahead, Apendra.
Thank you. Whoever asked that question. I'm very passionate about it. We as leaders, we assure you, right? I'm underlining, assure you that we don't see any difference, right? So basically, just focus on your skill set. It is not intimidating. Nothing is impossible, be it women or men. Cyber is, like I said, it's a very broad field. all women, everybody is included in this, because we need people and all the intelligence in the world. Because if women don't get into this, almost 50% of the population will not be, participating in this growing industry. So we welcome all the women, and it's not at all intimidating.
You had your hand up too, Daniel. Did you want to chime in on that one as well?
There's a kind of a movement of groups, women in tech, that I very much encourage. I've actually connected a couple of CISOs from a couple of the largest banks in the US and get them together. And, I can't offer any information because I don't have the experience. But for me to be able to facilitate that communication, I got 2 CISOs from large banks. One was new, one had been in the industry for a long time. And that connection allowed them to further their career. A lot of these groups, there's one here in London that I know of. I know the woman who runs it, does a great job with it. She now runs her own company. Having that network of women who have the experience and can talk to you and support you and give you that guidance is really powerful. So look for those women in tech groups. Literally, you can type it in Google, you will undoubtedly find it. And it's a really, really helpful way to understand what you're going to face and how you as a woman can address it. I highly encourage it. Some great people out there doing it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think getting a mentor in this field isn't a big stretch. I think most people are willing to sit down and have a conversation over a cup of coffee, whether it's in life or online, and just explain the opportunities and where they see some of the challenges that people could learn how to solve.
I can't stress enough the community aspect. I think all of you hit the nail on the head with finding a community of like-minded folks, finding a mentor in this space. I think on our community, the cyber and security community, we've specifically gone out of the way as well to try to create a very inclusive and diverse atmosphere for folks to be able to get that like very, very equal level of education and training. And we've seen a lot of folks come through and be very, very successful in that. So I couldn't agree more. We've got another question that comes through, and this one actually kind of dovetails very, very much into, one of the topics that I was going to bring up. There's an amazing amount of frustration. This is, very similar to the way that this question is laid out. I want to kind of dovetail between 2 different topics here, right? An amazing amount of frustration, rightfully so, in the way job descriptions are written. And we've talked a little bit about, we've hinted a little bit about that, here in this as well. And we specifically talk about quote unquote entry level jobs, typically requiring something like 3 to 5 years worth of experience, sometimes requiring CISSP, sometimes requiring, they've included 3 different job roles into those job descriptions. And then we've got a question here from Devanshu that talks about the job description for cybersecurity role days have a lot of technical requirements, even for entry-level roles. How can someone looking for such roles, try to get interview calls from companies? Are certificates a good way to go? Daniel, you're laughing. You're very passionate about this. I love the look on your face right now. I want to start off with my hard question first before we get into Devanshu's, and I want to know explicitly, what are you doing in your organization to fix the job descriptions that your team is putting up? And then I want you to answer, Devanshu's question.
So what I did is I went through and I deleted every single one of them and sat down with the authors and we rewrote them. I did have one person on my team who was very, very sensitive to this. And we had a new job posting. We put it out there and we wrote it very differently. All the certification crap came out, all of the things that we felt would be intimidating about the description came out. Is it perfect? No. But I also put it out to several women who are engineers and leader positions in our company and said, give us feedback. Is this intimidating? Because we wanted to encourage, reaching out and getting that feedback. The only way to change it systemically is internally. And it's getting the feedback from people who we're trying to attract. As far as the person who's applying, sadly, what I'm going to give you are excuses or kind of the things that shouldn't be an issue, but unfortunately, because of the recruiting practices, which, by the way, I also have another meeting to go have a little conversation with our recruiters to stop doing some of this stuff, is the certifications. I know it's silly. I know we'll all speak out against it. But in today's world, unfortunately, because recruiters have to use a bit of a tick box exercise to it, having a certification actually gets their attention. Having a programming language, I know I can't believe I'm saying it, but having a programming language gets the attention, but the certification is probably the first tick box. And even that's if it's I'm trying to remember the Security A+, or if it's the CISSP, great. If it's a challenge, absolutely understand it. Maybe look for some of those other roles that Upendra or Najib talked about. Look for those as your foot in the door, but please don't get discouraged. Just keep looking, but also understand that there are still recruiters out there that are looking to check the box. Just don't get discouraged.
So
I'll apologize now for them.
Yeah. I want to pivot this one over to Janine really quick, because from an inclusive perspective, and Daniel brought it up as well, what are you doing specifically inside of Netgear to try to make your job descriptions more inclusive and to try to break down some of those barriers as well?
Well, I think that certification does go a long way. It explains that you've at least got a baseline of knowledge. There are a number of privacy and different regulations that are passing not only via country, but by particular states as well. So, in California, we've got the California Privacy and Consumer Act. Other states are likely to follow. We've got a lot of traction overseas as well. So having some certification and some awareness of these types of policies, if you're interested in going into that policy or certification side of this, makes a lot of sense. In terms of making these jobs more accessible and inclusive, a lot of it boils down to being specific about what the job entails and having some understanding of its growth implications. So for all the positions on my team, I have an understanding of what the team is doing today and where they could grow their skills in order to help tomorrow based on the trends that we're seeing. So this industry is constantly evolving. The rise in ransomware attacks and activities that have come in just the past few months due to the geopolitical destabilization that's occurred wasn't something that we were anticipating last year, but is obviously set a new trajectory for the years to come.
I want to level set really quick. I'm not a fan of certifications whatsoever. I utterly despise them. I've worked in the industry. I was a SANS instructor for 5 years. I've built certifications. I'm not a fan of them. I don't think that certifications are the right answer. And Daniel, while I respect what it is that you're saying, you are unfortunately right, is that some recruiters do still require them on the checkbox perspective. But I also like what you said, where we have to be the change internally to force recruiters to not use that as the metric for entry. And so I hear the comments on certifications, but I'm very, very, very vehement that I think that is the bad viewpoint for our industry, especially given we all just sat here and talked about that there are multiple paths and multiple ways into this industry. There is no certification that exists out there that accommodates those paths of where you come from and where you can go to. And I think once we acknowledge that, we realize that it's not as easy as just going out and getting a certification.
Agreed. I think that another way to tackle that problem is also looking at the current trends. So with mammoth companies like Google and Amazon and Microsoft supporting Rust as a programming language, I think that's a great one to learn for embedded devices as an alternative to C. So try as I might for the past couple decades to get rid of stir copy, I keep finding it everywhere. So I think, these larger companies with all the expertise and funding needed to do training have never figured out, even with solid C coders, how to get rid of some of the common errors. And so this language, Rust, that's been developed to provide the programmatic support securely is a godsend. So I think there are different trends throughout the industry, different tools throughout the industries, and just identifying something that's interesting and latching on and becoming more of an expert in it is going to be noticed.
I love how you say that, right? And I think that, unknowingly you made my point, right? The certification process, and we'll get to Tejas's question here because I think this is also very valid. The education process is such a laggard in the way that technology is moving in the cybersecurity space that, to be able to say that you're qualified because you currently possess this particular piece of medium, I think is hard. And so Najib, I want to kind of pivot this one over to you, let you start off with this one
Sure.
from Tejas, where he says, coming from a high school student's point of view, if I want to get into cybersecurity, should I go and spend my money on all the certs, or should I go and spend my money on getting the skills or getting a degree in cyber?
Yeah, the cultural change and the change from within is going to take time. And I know that you mentioned that, Neil, and also Daniel mentioned that these certifications are required. I think that you have to have to find a way to get the attention of the recruiters and the companies out there. But look, I don't want to downplay the need for the specialization or some skills that you bring to the table, because this any technology or any industry that you step into, you need to be able to present some value to the organization. Otherwise, you're not going to get that role that you're looking for. So whether it's a specialized skill that you're offering, things that you already have done something in the past that you can enhance, and then say that, hey, I can use my previous skill set to contribute towards your up leveling the security aspect in your documentation, or any data protection pieces, or anything which basically relates to the different components that we talked about within cybersecurity. You have to highlight those. So I would say don't go spend all your money on certs, but do spend some money on certification. So at least you have one area of focus or two areas of focus that you can really highlight for the companies.
Awesome. I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about career stuff, which is always awesome. I want to kind of take the last few minutes to really kind of pivot and move forward and really look forward into some of the things that are coming down the pipe for our industry when we really talk about the future of cybersecurity. I want to hit a comment came up recently in chat. It's obviously been a topic of conversation when it in everybody's mind, which is really this Russia-Ukraine conflict. I've spent 10 years in the Air Force doing offensive cyber for the National Security Agency. I've been on the front lines of the nation state types of attacks when it comes to this type of warfare. Seeing this actually play out has been really kind of surreal for me. But at the same time, we do have to ask ourselves, what are the implications when it comes to like this question is the security posture for corporations. And so, Upendra, I want to kind of send this over to you, especially since you're a very, very successful author, very well published and things like that. What are your thoughts on, kind of the way that this changes the cybersecurity posture and landscape for us or for corporations as a whole?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I mean, if we take a step back, right? I mean, this Russia-Ukraine, we saw CISA sending us the, more like an advisory that, hey, all the corporations, buckle up, and also for the critical infrastructure and, those kinds of corporations. But taking a step back, right? I mean, if we think about World War I, and obviously this is not a World War III, by no means.
Yet.
But if we go back to World War I, right? I mean, World War I was fought in trenches, supported by artilleries and, machine guns, and there was a minimal of airplanes over there. World War II, as we saw, obviously all of the above, airplanes, and there was some nuclear that was used, right? The current war, and that's why this is a defining moment for us, it's a cyber conflict between, nation states. It's usually fought, typically, they have been fought in the shadows, and very little information actually come in the public, right? I mean, so we heard about Stuxnet and those kinds of things, but the cyber war was primarily, under the rug. But this was the pivotal, this is a pivotal war because this is for the first time states or nations are saying that there is a cyber war. And CISA, like I said, has issued guidance. And Ukraine, they created an IT army, as many of you have read. There are like 400,000 volunteers. So what that means is that about 500,000 population of Ukraine, they are cyber warriors. Just think about it, right? So each and every one of us is a cyber warrior. So if that is the implication, when we are talking about organizations, obviously there is, protection when you're going cloud, when you are APIs, when you are running all these analytics and a whole 9 yards, as you are fortifying your code, making sure that you have a good GRC program. All these things are kind of, you have to do, but each and every employee has to be trained. So security has to be a team sport. So it is not just CISO, it's not just your CISO's organization. Each and every employee, each and every contractor has to be trained in security, just like the IT army. And in the security is a community sport, so that is what I wanted to highlight here, is that it's not just one organization. The public and the private sectors, they have to come together to solve this problem. So that is what I would say, join this force, and security is a community sport.
Let me flip this one on you a little bit, right? Because I think that there's a darker side to that coin, right? You talk about the 500,000 people that are coming to bat for Ukraine in a volunteer army. What if we were on the receiving end of that $500,000 cyber war, army? Do you think that today's corporations would be prepared to defend a vehemently open 500,000 person cyber army against them?
Yeah, so that is a very loaded question. It depends on the capability maturity model. I'm not here to comment on postures of different companies. But as an attack comes in with all of them on a single target, and we have seen those activists and those kinds of things, especially when Julian Assange, Snowden days, right? And there were multiple activists that attacked all the financial institutions, and most of the financial institutions were down around 2010, 2011, as some of you might remember. It's a difficult question to answer, Neil, let me tell you that. But we all have to make sure that we follow a good cyber hygiene, good cyber practice, and make sure that each and every employee and contractor is trained. Because while we are having this conversation, I'm sure somebody in somebody's organization is being phished. And is that person equipped to answer and respond properly to that phishing?
Fair point. Does anybody else want to weigh in on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and its implications?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I think one of the biggest threats might be how hard it is to use some of the security controls that we have in place, like strong passwords, dual factor auth. If we could get people to do more of the basics, that has been shown to reduce threat significantly. I think 90% of the cyber landscape is corporate owned, which makes it a massive target for even unintended attacks like that of NotPetya that we saw a few years ago, where NotPetya was intended for Ukraine, but unintentionally propagated globally, causing over 10 billion in damage. So I think Russia has very integrated physical and virtual fighting capabilities and seems inclined to retaliate against economic sanctions and general G20 isolation via cyber attacks against companies and brands that are associated or headquartered in the countries they're upset with.
Makes sense. I see this question come through, and it's actually a really, really good pivot point, because as we talk about the future, as we talk about the changing landscape with Russia and Ukraine, we also have to talk about technology, right? And obviously, we just had a whirlwind of conferences a couple weeks ago, right? With RSA, we've had Gartner, we had Consensus 2022 happen a couple weeks ago. And I'm sure, like you, most of these conferences, everybody who went was inundated with the buzzword bingo and the new technologies that always show up at these conferences. I see Daniel laughing. He loves this right here, right? So what I want to do is I want to start with you, Najib. And the question that was up earlier was about artificial intelligence. But when you look at artificial intelligence, zero trust network architecture, zero trust, in general, blah, 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 blah. What are the future technologies and or concepts that people should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and in fact, artificial intelligence is going to play a very crucial role to not only increase the cybersecurity threat, but also to protect it, from the attackers. So, look, I think a lot of things that I'm seeing in the technology trends is that this consumer-centric, approaches that are being, created in these AI programs. So a lot of this, starts to come in, and in form of bot programs or anything like that, where they would come to a system or come to consumers in a very friendly way and non threatening way, and try to get in and take away the data or steal the data. So AI is actually then presenting that threat that it's using consumer-centric approaches to be able to attack the systems, attack information, and all that stuff. Now, how do you prevent that from happening? Obviously, you have to start thinking like, how do you differentiate between, a true threat and, or not a threat? So you just have to, take certain measures in place. And Janine mentioned some of the stuff that, coming to the fundamentals. And I coach basketball, so I always teach my teams like, hey, follow the fundamentals of basketball. This is exactly follow the fundamentals. What are some of the things that are flagged as threats? Things that could be quick checks that we want to make sure. Two-factor authentication, protection of your data, encryption, making sure that you look at the URL redirects, make sure that you have your programs written in such a way that it can protect you from, getting, being vulnerable to these, attacks. But AI is definitely playing a crucial role in increasing the threat of cybersecurity, and we just have to use, it's just like the metal cuts metal. We have to use AI in terms of combating these AI threats that we have in the market as well.
How about you, Daniel? So go ahead, Janine. Go ahead, Janine.
Oh, I'll go after Daniel.
Oh, okay.
No, Janine, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say that one of the trends that does seem interesting to me is the trend towards ransomware going after individuals. So I think that Russian hacking groups have appeared to be going after supply chains, but they're also targeting key individuals who are easily targetable. They don't use dual-factor authentication. They've got some public or internet-facing devices. They seem susceptible to extortion and able to pay a lot. So it's an interesting turn of events, because traditionally ransomware attacks were against larger targets.
No, I think that's a good point too. Yeah, the change of the TTPs. How about you, Daniel? You next.
So first, I'll do my joke.
I knew I could count on you for the cynicism.
SMBC comics that says AI is just a fancy label slapped on top of machine learning. It's a great comic. Go look at it. I still laugh at it today. It's only a couple weeks old. But the concept of using algorithms and machine learning is very powerful. And I've seen live examples of it. One of the brightest women I've ever known, Allison Miller, wrote some amazing stuff, or her team wrote some amazing stuff under her direction when she was working in electronic arts, and gave a great presentation at Metricon. And it blew us away. They were able to detect false logins or account takeover attempts in a matter of seconds. The power is there in the tools and the machine learning. And yes, we need to absolutely harness it. Companies are getting better at it, but they're also throwing around really simple algorithms saying, ooh, well, we can't call it machine learning. That's not sexy. Let's throw the AI label onto it. But the power is there. I don't want to discount what is underneath it. It is incredibly useful. Some of my best job positions that I've put out there, just another hint at other things you can do, has been data analysts. And in fact, I know one of the largest banks in the United States has a team that's full of data analysts that sort through all of the data that's coming in. That idea of being able to use data, use information you're gathering as you're either collecting information or you're exploring information is incredibly powerful. It's a future that we need to leverage.
All right, how about you, Apendra? You want to comment on future technologies?
Yeah, as we, I mean, I don't want to, obviously I completely agree with the AI comment. I mean, so that is given, and I completely agree. As we are thinking about, we go from physical world into a hybrid world right now, right? I mean, in this digital economy, what has happened is that with e-commerce, m-commerce, people flocking from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3 to metaverses, with some decentralized activities, the attack surface has increased, right? And when we are thinking about the increase in attack surface, how are you going to cater to all these different modalities or channels, cross-channel, cross-app kind of thing, is using APIs and cloud, so you have to be everywhere, you have to be omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, and that happens via APIs. So API security, the cloud security, and how do you bake in security into your applications and your businesses? Janine and Daniel talked about the identity side of the equation, right? I mean, how do you do MFAs? But MFAs, it can cause friction to your consumers. So how do you come up with those passwordless experiences? So that is where the technology, is going.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That-
Well, listen, we are out of time. This was an amazing conversation. I could literally sit here for another hour and talk to all of you. All of you are incredibly awesome, fantastic amount of knowledge here. And I couldn't be more humbled and honored to have been able to moderate this panel. So thank you all so very much for this. I really do truly appreciate it. I know we all love cybersecurity. This is a great industry to be in, and you guys showed that passion here today. And so I really do appreciate it. Thank you so very much for your time. I want to say a huge thank you to BayOne for having us on today and allowing me to moderate. Anuj, back over to you, sir. You're still on mute.
That had to happen, right? That had to happen. Come on. Literally, this was one of the best sessions I've actually been part of. This is amazing. So thank you so much. This was a lot to chew on. I'm pretty sure, a lot of our listeners are going to go back and sort of review that data and understand how to sort of keep moving forward. Thank you so much for all of the panelists, again, Najib, Janine, Daniel, Pendra, and Neil, for taking out your time to join us today and share such interesting and insightful information. And we look forward to actually following up with your career path and how everything's going for you guys as well. And maybe we need to do this again. It's been a very, very interesting topic. I'm sure on behalf of everyone, I could literally hear you guys talk all day. So that's a given for sure. For all our listeners, if we didn't get to any of your questions live, ask us on Twitter at BayOne Solutions and tag Future of Work. If you missed part or want to re-listen any of this exciting conversation, these will be available on YouTube shortly. If you'd like to learn more about our webinars or listen to some of our old ones, where we've got some great speakers as well, make sure to visit our LinkedIn and YouTube pages. It has some really, really good content. If you'd like to know more about BayOne, again, please visit us on our website, bayone.com. And thank you again, and hope to see you on our next live stream. Enjoy the rest of your day and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.